Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Rock and Roll, the enrollment marketing podcast created by Vision Point Marketing. This is the first episode in our new series we're calling What Keeps You Up at Night, to better understand the experience of marketers, enrollment agents, and campus leaders, and see how we can get to the other side of our common challenges. I'm Katie Campbell, Chief Client Officer here at Vision Point, and I'm joined today by Dr. Jennifer Lindon, President and CEO of Hazard Community and Technical College. Thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Lindon.
Thank you, Katie. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're so grateful. I'd love to start with just learning more about Hazard Community and Technical College. Do you mind giving me a little bit of the spiel? Who's your service area? What's your specialty? What makes you all you?
Sure. Well, Hazard Community and Technical College, or HCTC, we are located in southeastern Kentucky. So we are in the mountains in Kentucky. I think in Kentucky you get a little bit of everything from the bluegrass, to the hills, to the mountains. So we are here in the mountains, closer to eastern Tennessee, western North Carolina. And we serve 7 counties primarily in the heart of Appalachia. So we have Breathitt, Lee, Wolfe, Owsley, Knott, Leslie, and Perry counties. Although we do have students who come to us, especially through online classes from all across the Commonwealth, so all across Kentucky. But that's our primary service area. Typically, these students, these folks who are from the areas and who are coming to our college are facing significant challenges. I did mention that we are in the heart of Appalachia. So we have many first generation college students. We have many students who are coming from single family incomes. We have many students who are coming from generational poverty. We have students who have insecurities as far as housing, as far as food, as far as transportation. So when we see students coming to our college, we are really working with them on how we can best serve them holistically. And many times that involves non-academic as well as academic challenges and barriers. So we really work to make sure that the student is secure in every way before they can even begin to address those academic concerns that they might have. So, we're working with them kind of in a case management approach to where we're trying to find what's right for them as far as housing, as far as food, as far as transportation. And we don't have public transportation here. So we're looking at all those things, childcare. So how can we get them in the best place possible to then be able to address what academic issues they might have? And then we're working to get them connected with tutors, success coaches, all of those things. But it's very much a holistic case management. Almost, we call it intrusive advising because we're really getting in there and asking those hard questions and really getting to know our students. But you'll see the people on our campuses, and we have several different campuses throughout our service area. You'll see that our folks really care about our students. We are doing what we do because we love it, and we love to help our students, and we love to help our region.
Yeah. Oh, that hits so deep. And I think it's almost like what you described is something I think a lot of two-year schools do really well and are really special. And it's very much focusing on a human-centered approach versus just a student-centered approach. And the way you just described it was almost like actually that comes first. Like for even someone to get to being a student, we know there's so many different things, transportation, childcare, family commitments, income, whatever it might be to set them up for that. I'm curious. I know it sounds like that was no shortage of a service area that you all are acting in and servicing. Any kind of obstacles or things that come up from being maybe in a more rural part of the state than a more metro area?
Well, yes, I mentioned transportation for one thing, where we don't have the public transportation. So that certainly is an issue. Sometimes you have a student and literally a flat tire or an issue with their vehicle can mean the difference in whether or not they can complete that semester with us. So I do think there are certain challenges being in a rural area. And if you look here in the mountains where we are, terrain is everything. So sometimes people might say, well, why do you have those campuses? Because they're 30 minutes apart. Well, because of terrain. And you might see 30 minutes, but if you look at the route, it can be quite challenging, especially in the winter. Now, yes, we do have improved internet, and that has allowed students to be able to access courses online. But we all know online's not for everyone. And quite frankly, being in the rural area that we're in and being here in the mountains, we still are struggling with internet accessibility and affordability. Granted, it has improved, but it still has a way to go before it reaches what's called that last mile.
Yeah.
And so up in the hollows, or the hollers, as we call them, it's still not always accessible. And if it is, it's not fast. You're not going to be able to watch videos and so forth, like what you would need in your courses and your curriculum. And it's not affordable.
Yeah. My marketing hat almost comes on hearing that in a sense too, of then like how do you reach those students? And I'll keep that as a note for us to come back to if they, so many college marketing plans are video, heavy internet reliability. And if those aren't the options that these students have access to, that's not where we're going to intersect their daily life, then where is that and how do we adjust? Okay. I'd be curious, Dr. Lindon, too, is there something that tends to surprise people about Hazard? Like once they learn it, they're like, oh, I had no idea they had that, they offered that, they cared in that way. I'm curious to what comes to mind for you.
Yeah, well, certainly we are in a beautiful area. We get all 4 seasons, some of the best hiking that you will find anywhere in the nation here. And we actually are an hour away from Red River Gorge. And Red River Gorge actually has some of the best climbing in the nation. So
Oh,
people come from all over. People actually come from overseas to hike at Red River Gorge and to climb at Red River Gorge. And I should be specific, not just hike, climb. We're talking about the major rock climbing. I'm not
oh,
a climber, I'm a hiker. But if you're a climber, they say that the best is at the gorge, and that's about an hour from Hazard. So, just a beautiful area. There's so many opportunities here with ecotourism. You can jump on a four-wheeler or a side by side and go out in the mountains. So, it's just lovely. But in particular, I wanted to mention the gorge and kind of a novelty that we have is the mother goose. So, we actually have right now, I don't think they're really using it for anything other than a novelty, but we have the mother goose, and it's been a grocery store, it's been an Airbnb, but it is actually, you have to look it up online if you haven't looked it up. It is a large goose head. So, and actually, the head fell off a few months ago, and we had to fundraise and get the head put back on the mother goose. But the mother goose can only be found in Hazard. So it is the large goose head, and then the body of the goose is a restaurant or a store or an Airbnb or whatever it is that year. So it's been many different iterations, but
I,
the
I
mother
love
goose.
I did not expect see that one coming at all. And a quick Google search featured on Oprah and the New York Times. Absolutely. Like those are, I feel like are the things that, I don't know, give places a little character. They're a classic road trip kind of stop. Like you're not going to see it anywhere else. And the climbing sounds incredible. Definitely would be a surprise, I think, for me, even thinking about that part of the country. So I kind of alongside that, so that's Hazard and who your students are and how you all work with them. I'd be curious to your journey to get there. How did you end up as the president and CEO?
Well, and actually, I really never left. So I am from the area.
Hmm.
I am the first person from southeastern Kentucky to actually hold the position of president at HCTC, and I'm the first female to hold the position. But I started as a student at HCTC. I'm from Hazard, from Perry County, went to the high school here, Hazard High School, and I just ended up at HCTC. Even then, I knew the place was special, and I kind of thought, wouldn't it be cool to work here one day? But, it was kind of a fleeting thought, and that was kind of it. My path led me to an MBA, and I was working at the hospital and started working at the technical campus here and before it became part of the Kentucky Community and Technical College system. So one thing I didn't mention is HCTC is one of 16 colleges in the Kentucky Community and Technical College system. So this was before all of that happened. We were Kentucky Tech at the time and started working there and just started in the business office and kept working my way up, went to financial aid, taught, worked in workforce. I was over all the technical programs at one time on our technical campus and just kept going back to school and working my way up and eventually got that PhD and decided that I would apply for the president's position. And lo and behold, here I am.
I love that. It's an incredible story. And also to be able to see and really have personal experience with every evolution of the college and in kind of to know all these areas probably so intimately as like working directly in them. So then what an amazing perspective to have as president and CEO to have that direct hands-on ground game experience throughout a student's journey. Yeah, I think that's probably a rarity, and I think that's something that's really special. I'd be curious then, as you've been in this role, as we're talking to college marketers all day, every day, there are so many pressures on each institution. You have the demographic cliff looming and finally here. You have changing job markets being where you all are located. Maybe you even have things as sudden as Hurricane Helene blowing through and affecting your students and campuses. With the theme of this episode, I want to ask the signature question. What are the things keeping you up at night?
Well, there are many things that keep me up at night. Certainly, not so much related to marketing, but certainly security, safety, and security is something that I think is keeping all college administrators up at night right now. You know, we had been trained and taught, and we still want to be welcoming. We want to have that welcoming, wrap our arms around their students' atmosphere. At the same time, how do you balance that with being safe? How do you balance, keeping an eye on who's coming on and off your campus and monitoring things and making sure your faculty, staff, and students are safe, but yet still saying, yeah, come on in the door. We want everybody here. So what is that balance on being able to keep our folks safe, but still make sure that we're promoting that welcoming atmosphere? You mentioned Hurricane Helene, and we had a very similar occurrence in 2022. We had devastating floods that affected our entire service area here at HCTC. So I do think, at least speaking from someone who's from Appalachia, the mountains always kind of protected us, but we're seeing more and more climate impacted occurrences happening in our service area than ever before. And our students face so many challenges already that when you have natural disasters that are happening more and more often, that really sets our students back. It really just puts additional barriers upon them and upon their families. And we have to be understanding as colleges to that. Uh, in particular, with marketing, I think about the competition. And when I say that, being from a rural community college, we used to kind of be the only game in town, right? You didn't have a whole lot of competitors. You didn't have to worry as much about online competition. But now, I mean, we have just HCTC at least 500 competitors. Mm. If you're looking, if you're thinking about your online competitors, and how do we make sure that our message is out there among all those other messages? There are online competitors that have more in their marketing budgets than I do in my operating budget. So how do I compete with them as a small rural college? How do I make sure that students understand that they can still afford college? How do I make them be aware of all the scholarships and opportunities that are available for them at home without them spending a ton of money on courses online that might not transfer somewhere? So how do we get our message out there among all the major players? Because now we used to be a bigger fish in a smaller pond, but now it's quite the opposite.
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting way to phrase it. To start, also back to, I think even the way you answered this question is such a reflection of that human-centered approach that you bring to, so that it sounds like your college brings, which is you started with like safety and security and and a person's individual experience, even with climate change, let alone their and how that impacts their daily life, let alone their relationship to college. But then it goes down into kind of this marketing challenge to your point of it sounds like you all went from having, maybe handfuls of competitors to hundreds of competitors. And I think you bring up a great point of not only how does your message be so distinct? How are you breaking out from what we call at Vision Point the sea of sameness, not just in higher ed marketing, but you think of, I think I heard that the recent stat was users are spending 8 hours a day on digital media, up from 7 hours last year. So across that 8 hours a day spent scrolling or spent watching or interacting with digital media, how are you standing out from all the content that they see? And I think two-year colleges have a really unique ability to kind of go at certain cliches even more directly or with more of a risk tolerance than some of those online competitors because you have that connection to the community. But then you also have what you were saying, which is how do you also not get lumped into the college stereotypes that you can't afford this or that it will lead you to massive debt, massive individual debt crisis. And I think you bring up a really good or a really interesting kind of intersection of, okay, is that a place where we can have distinct messaging that we could be the option that won't lead to that? But also just saying you're affordable, that's not quite enough. It's
Right.
consider college at all, and then we could be that option. And messaging, finding that overlap between your strengths and what your students care about, I feel like that is that if I was drawing like a diagram almost, that's where I would want to find that perfect overlap because it brings an authentic brand to a motivator of your core audience and then putting that out there for them. But I can
Mhm.
imagine that keeps a lot of college marketers up at night.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I was actually just at the American Marketing Association's AMA's symposium for higher education, and we asked marketers across the board what keeps them up at night. And one thing that came up quite frequently was the marketing admissions um, divide in some cases, whether that's organizationally or just even culturally on their campuses. I'm curious to how that works at Hazard. How do those two teams kind of intersect each other?
Mhm. I think we tackle that pretty well. Of course, we are smaller. So we have a couple of different marketing teams, and actually, our marketing director at Hazard reports directly to me as the president because I like to have my hands in it. But we have an integrated marketing team, and that team has a couple of different faculty, a couple of different administrators, a couple of folks from student services. There's some admissions folks in there, and they look at everything that the marketing team is working on. So every type of social media post, every flyer, every brochure, every rack card, they're looking at that, and they just provide some input there. But we meet once every 2 weeks. So we meet bi-weekly with a small marketing team. And the marketing team that meets bi-weekly, we have all of our folks from our marketing team on there. So our graphics designer, our videographer, our PR person, our marketing director. I sit on that team. Our chief academic officer sits on that team. Our chief student services officer sits on that team. And our chief admissions officer sits on that team. And we talk about the direction that we want things to go in. And we really put enrollment first. Enrollment is always first. We know that marketing has many different hats that they wear, from advocacy to enrollment to special events that we might be having, but we always try to put enrollment first. So we have to prioritize many times. So we have that small group that meets every other week, but then we have an expanded team. We have an expanded marketing group meeting, and they meet every month. And again, that just kind of helps with transparency, helps with communication. And on that team, we have some folks from admissions there. We have our deans, our academic deans. We have some other faculty who are on our student engagement committee. So we try to make it very interactive. We try to make sure that everybody's very transparent so they can understand, because sometimes, you'll hear someone say, well, marketing didn't get to what I wanted. Well, we want people to understand why and what the priority is, and what the timelines are and the deadlines are. And so You really have to be diligent about having these types of smaller group meetings and expanded marketing group meetings because it's really helped with communication and helping people understand why things are or are not prioritized.
Yeah. No, I love that idea of you almost build consensus and understanding. That doesn't mean that everyone gets a vote in every matter, but this enrollment first mindset I actually think is quite unique. We at Vision Point, we always say we're enrollment marketers because all of our marketing efforts, even if it is at the top of the funnel, brand awareness type of thing, or very low in the funnel for yield marketing, it's all kind of going towards the shared goal of driving enrollment or helping us support our sustained enrollment growth or whatever our goal may be. And I think bringing in such a kind of a wide view, you all have such a widened aperture at the view that you have participating in these meetings. They have that awareness, consciousness, understanding as to why are we doing certain things. And then that also leads to maybe why we haven't quite gotten to these things on this list over here. Still important, still good ideas, just maybe not at the top of the priority list when you do have constrained resources like a small team or a budget or whatever it might be. I love that idea of the small group and then the expanded group too. I'm curious to kind of things that since you've been president and CEO, other things that you have done from like an enrollment marketing perspective that's helped support enrollment with that end game in mind.
One really neat thing that we are actually in the throes of doing right now is we have a campaign called Enroll and Win. And so between the fall and the spring, we try to get all of our returning students to go ahead and get their schedules and get enrolled. So they're ready to go come January. They're ready to go for the spring semester. So we do this Enroll and Win campaign. And if they register early, then they're put in for a drawing for a $500 gift card. All the students really like that because it's the holidays, right? And everybody wants to go ahead and get their classes and maybe they can win that gift card. Now, I probably never would have thought we'd be doing that years ago to try to get enrollment, but hey, it works. It helps us because all the students are going ahead and getting their schedules. They're getting ready so that when we come back from the holiday break, we're ready to go and hit the ground running. So the Enroll and Win campaign has been very, very successful. We also have another campaign, and we have different campaigns, almost like sales, if you will. So if you enroll between such and such time and such time, you will be entered to win a free gas card, and we'll give away gas cards like for weeks, for like 6 weeks in the summer, trying to get people to come in for the fall and get registered. And we'll have the drawing. We'll show the picture of the student on Facebook. Facebook is still really big in our rural area. Even with our younger students, they still like Facebook as far as where they go to look for different activities and events and things going on with our college. They still like Facebook. So we do still utilize Facebook quite a bit, as well as Instagram. I mean, we try it all. TikTok, we're X, we're all over the place with, and we do look at that too as far as marketing, because if it's something that's more advocacy or something that I'm doing, we're more likely to put that presidential piece on X or on LinkedIn. But if it's something more targeted to the students, yeah, we're going to go to TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. So we're always out there trying to look at who our audience is and what's the best approach with that particular audience. But the gas cards, the gift cards, those have been pretty successful for us in getting students to come in and go ahead and get some things done as far as their schedules.
Yeah, I love that. I love that for a couple of reasons. One is I think more and more so higher ed is starting to accept that this is a customer journey, not just a student journey. And in a customer journey, rational people respond to incentives is what basic economic principles tell us. And I think you all providing incentives and incentives that directly relate to the challenges that you talked about earlier on, transportation, getting them here, gas gift cards. Okay, we've identified a challenge. Here's a solution to help support a student's human experience that allows them to become a student. I think that is so well centered around your audience. And to your point, the channel that you're putting it on, you all are meeting them where they are. Even if Facebook data across the country or community colleges or two-year schools is telling us, oh, they're moving off Facebook, but in your community, if it's working for you for those messages, that's data over ego. That's where we want to be. Or tailoring your content for different audiences, I think is absolutely so critical. We don't have unlimited resources or unlimited eyeballs. So to make sure they're seeing what we want them to see, I think is such a great point. Um, Dr. Lindon, before we close, I have a couple of rapid fire questions for you, if you don't mind. This is kind of how we end some of our episodes, just to maybe get a little bit of the what comes to mind really quickly for you. So word, sentence, would love your answers here as we wrap up. To start, a great book or podcast that you'd recommend that you've read or listened to lately.
I love reading things about Appalachia and Appalachian history. So I actually just finished this. It's a really quick read, and it's called Miracle on Caney Creek. And it is the story of Alice Lloyd College. And that's a private college that's nestled in the mountains. And they still very much are place-based, in-person classes. And they focus on education and business. They have kind of a limited number of degrees they offer. I think they are offering criminal justice, but it's such a nice college to go and visit. If you haven't been there before, I encourage you to. It's about 20-30 minutes from Hazard, again, nestled in the mountains. Alice Lloyd College, great history, great story. They actually just received a $10 million gift from the Bill Gatton Foundation. So they can teach us some lessons on fundraising as well. So very proud of our partnership with that private college. And I also finished reading one called A Timeless Thread, and it is the history of the Whitaker family, Whitaker Bank, which is kind of a well-known bank in Kentucky. And he also, this gentleman, Elmer Whitaker, made his money in a number of ways. Anything from horse racing to coal mining, which used to be very dominant in our area. So interesting historical perspective on Mr. Whitaker and his life.
Oh, two great recommendations. I will add both to my to be read list. That's awesome and relevant not only to your area but your industry. So perfect. As we sneak, we are recording this the week of Thanksgiving, and as we slowly sneak into the holiday season, curious to your favorite holiday tradition.
I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's one that I always get suckered into, and that is the homemade Christmas cookies, complete with make your own icing, do the decorating. And I think what always happens is somehow everybody quits on me, and I end up being the one to finish decorating, and I'm not artistic. So the cookies end up looking pretty sad, but it's the Christmas cookies. It's the tradition. Every time I try to get out of it, the kids, it's all like, no, we have to do it. But somehow they always quit on me. But it's Christmas cookies.
I feel like that is a solid holiday voluntold situation, if you will.
Mhm.
And it has to be done. So, and it matters more how they taste, not how they look.
That's true. I'll keep telling myself that.
Yeah. And then last one for you, just being a president and CEO on a campus, what's one thing you wish every college president could hear or truly know?
Well, I think my message would be, never lose sight of the student focus, because as a president, you get pulled away in a million different directions, in a million different meetings. And yes, you are the one who ultimately makes the decisions about the budget, about facilities, about personnel. And there's all these different things that you have to look at when you're managing your college effectively. But don't forget about what it's like to be a student and that student experience, because that's really why we got into it in the first place.
I love that. It needs to be kind of at the top of the list. That idea of feel like balance might be a theme we hear throughout this series, because it's not.
Yes.
But Dr. Lindon, thank you so much for the time. Thank you for joining the Rock and Roll podcast. And for all those listening, please keep tuning in for the What Keeps You Up at Night series. We're going to continue these conversations. But Dr. Lindon, so appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.